Hey friends, welcome to Super Thanks Sunday, where I'm going to be taking just a few minutes to thank some people who donated directly to me here on YouTube with the Super Thanks button right below this video. If you want to leave a comment for me to read to the rest of the class, feel free to donate to me directly with that Super Thanks button. Also, please be understanding that I usually record my videos about a week or two in advance before they go live, so please be patient if you're still waiting on your shout out. Odds are you probably donated after I recorded this video with peace and love. I've got a bunch to get through, so I'm going to try to speedrun it as best I can. First of all, we've got Miracle Jones, who donated $2 to say thanks. I appreciate your donation, Miracle Jones, and thank you so much. Next up, we have Sonic the Fantastic, who donated 20 Canadian dollars and said, "Thanks, you're the coolest. Your videos are the coolest, and I wanted to reward you in return. Enjoy these lovely bucks." Thank you so much, Sonic the Fantastic. An awesome name, by the way. I am a longtime Sonic the Hedgehog fan, so I can appreciate that. Your donation means so much to me, and I can't thank you enough for your kind words. Comments like this one just make my day, and it brings me so much joy to have fans that love my videos so much. Thanks again, Sonic the Fantastic. You are also the coolest. Next up, we've got John Core IL, who donated 10 bucks and said, "Love your honesty and how real you are in your videos lately. I can tell how much you genuinely love making these. Keep up the great work, brother." Man, it means the world to me to have that recognized. I put so much work into these videos, and it comes from a love for the game. I love video production, and I love the YouTube community as a whole. It makes me happy to get to be part of such a fantastic landscape of really cool people doing what they love. Thank you so much, John Core, you are the man. Up next, shout out to Mago Spud, who donated $2 to tell me that I'm one of their favorite channels to listen to while drawing. Thank you so much, my friend. I know there's a lot of people who only listen to these videos in the background, and honestly, I love that. I myself enjoy having YouTube on in the background while I'm cooking dinner for my wife and kiddos, or when I'm doing the dishes. It's really cool to think that I get to be someone else's background noise too. Thanks again for your support, and of course shout out to my audio only crew. Up next, we have Doug Couch 3543, who donated $2 and said, "Thanks dude, really love your videos. Love your SpongeBob 6-hour video. Great job, keep doing what you do." Doug Couch, thank you so much. I really needed to hear that right now. I felt kind of weird putting that SpongeBob compilation out because technically it's not like new content, it's just a re-upload of older videos. But I really loved the idea of all of those SpongeBob videos being in the same spot, so I'm glad that you liked it, Doug. Thanks for your support, man. Your donation is very appreciated. And lastly, we have Bingo from Bluey Fan, who donated $2 to say, "SpongeBob dealt with some serious issues over the 20 years on TV, and have you heard of Paw Patrol? It's a Nick Jr. show that's been on for 11 years. Right out the gate, thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it. Also, I love your username. Bluey is my all-time favorite modern kids cartoon. I watch it with my kiddos all the time. It's genuinely so good. Also, though, Paw Patrol. Definitely. I've watched that one with my 9-year-old daughter since she was a baby. It's crazy to me that that kid turns 10 here in a few months. It's just insane how time flies. But yeah, thanks again for your donation, my friend. And of course, I can't stress enough, if you don't want to donate, you totally don't have to. And if you can't donate, that's completely okay. You guys just being here and watching this video is so much support in the first place. The super thanks mean a lot because it directly helps put food on the table for me, but also people watching this video in the first place is always the easiest and quickest thing you can do to help me as a creator. You guys keep me going in this landscape where a ton of YouTubers are dropping like flies, and I know I say it a lot, but thank you so much for being here. Also, do me a huge solid, and if you made it this far through Super Thanks Sunday, drop me a thumbs up emoji in a comment, pretty please, just so I know how many of you were actually here. Thanks friends, and I hope you guys have a fantastic Sunday. Looking back on Nicktoons history, there's not very many characters who had it quite as bad as Timmy Turner did. I mean, this kid's life was so bad that he was assigned 2 mythical creatures to grant his every wish. The whole premise of the Fairly Odd Parents is really morbid when you think about it like that. Think about it, even his best friend Chester didn't have fairy godparents, and that says a ton considering that Chester and his dad are often shown eating food from the garbage and washing their paper plates for reuse. By all means, that's not to say that being in a bad financial situation makes you inherently miserable, but like, of anybody on the show, I felt like the universe could have given Chester a break. Granted, he always seemed like a rather happy kid and his dad was always there for him, but no one enjoys eating out of the garbage. Timmy, on the other hand, he deals with a different level of rough life. He has a roof over his head and food on the table, but unfortunately he also has absentee parents and a babysitter who's extremely abusive towards him. Timmy's situation is one that's kind of a mixed bag, to be honest. Where his parents do a great job with putting a roof over his head and food on the table, they completely lack in the emotional support and just being there in general. Timmy is a kid who unfortunately has to put up with a lot, and he's lucky to have fairy godparents like Cosmo and Wanda to help make up for where his parents dropped the ball. It's really interesting to ponder the concept of this show, considering that every kid's situation is different. For example, we have Remy Bucksaplenty. He's Timmy's enemy, and he also has a fairy godparent in the form of Wandissimo Magnifico. Remy's life is very different from Timmy's, yet their struggles are similar. Remy may be filthy rich and is basically able to have whatever he wants, except for one thing: the attention of his parents. That's without a doubt one thing that we can say for sure that they had in common. What's interesting though is thinking about the many different fairy godparents out there. We have Wandissimo, who you can tell does his best at emotionally comforting Remy, but doesn't really do all that great of a job because he's often too focused on, to put it in his words, his muy macho-ness. Then, on the complete other hand, we have Cosmo and Wanda, who generally do a good job of supporting Timmy emotionally and making him feel like they care about him. On the whole, we have two different kids with two completely different outlooks on life, both of which struggle with the same problem. However, one of them has godparents who seem very qualified to help out with the problem, whereas the other, not so much. This right here is interesting because it highlights a very evident flaw in the often seen bureaucratic side of fairy world. We often see the rulebook being referenced and enforced, which would lead us to understand that there is a power structure to the Society of Fairies. With that being said though, whoever is the higher up that assigns these fairies to their kids should clearly do some more research. You know, just some general compatibility checking between fairies and the kids that they're going to be going to. Also, on a random but kind of related note, I feel awful for whichever kid gets assigned to Jorgen von Strangle, because not only does he completely lack any emotional awareness, but he's just kind of a brazen jerk in general. With that being said though, at least they got a bullseye when pairing Timmy with his godparents. Where Timmy completely lacks in the real-life parents department, they more than make up for in the fairy godparents department. Throughout the series, we would see Timmy's parents neglect him over and over again, leaving him feeling like he isn't cared for by them. However, on today's nostalgic walk down memory lane, we're gonna check out an episode where their neglect reaches an all-time high. We're looking at none other than the season 2 episode, Mighty Mom and Dino Dad. This episode starts out early in the morning at the Turner household. We see Timmy's parents literally crunching numbers and working in their sleep as they both sleep talk about how they have to keep food on the table. Just then, their alarms go off and they're startled awake.
Mom, Dad, can you check my homework?
Yep, that's homework, all right.
Very good, Jenny. Here you go, sweetie. Tuna salad for lunch.
Mom, these are Dad's socks.
Hey, these have absolutely no arch support.
Cosmo and Wanda appear on the table disguised as some breakfast. They ask him what's going on with his parents, and he explains that they're so overworked that they don't really have any time to take care of him. They both leave for work, and we cut to later that night as they both get home.
Hooray, they're home!
So much joy in middle management.
Must overpay babysitter.
Thank you. Mom, Dad, I can't wait to tell you about my day.
Timmy has Cosmo and Wanda help him put his exhausted parents to bed. Timmy takes a moment to vent to his fairies, saying that it's unfair that his parents' overachieving is killing them and him. Wanda tries to empathize with Timmy and get him to see where his parents are coming from, saying that they're doing the best that they can and that they're only human.
You're right. The Crimson Chin, he's a superhero. He can do everything without even breaking a sweat.
Being a superhero would make any day easier.
Exactly. When my parents wake up tomorrow, I wish they had superpowers.
Wanda tells Timmy that he's gonna need to be more specific as she asks him which superpowers specifically he wants them to have. He wishes for the usual expected powers including super speed and super strength, invulnerability, and of course the ability to fly. To top it off, he wishes for Timmy senses so that they know when he needs their help, and of course anything else that Cosmo and Wanda can think of.
You wish it, we dish it!
Meat product! I'll take a shower!
And I'll meet you in the kitchen.
As the two of them find themselves crash landing back in their room, Timmy's dad quickly realizes what's going on here, as he points out their amazing abilities, citing the Crimson Chin comic book as a reference. Timmy's mom continues to read the comic, pointing out that if they're gonna be superheroes now, then they need to have top secret identities so their enemies don't hurt their family.
Do we have enemies?
Dinkleberg. Ah! Oh, Timmy's senses tingling.
Timmy needs our help.
But remember, we need to hide our powers. Timmy's a sharp kid.
Hi, guys.
What superpowers?
Timmy ends up asking his parents for help with his homework as he's in the middle of writing a report on the distance between the Earth and the Sun. His dad immediately flies off, going to measure the distance to the sun. Meanwhile, his mom learns that she has meat vision as she prepares a nice hearty breakfast for Timmy.
I'm back from the surface of the sun. I mean, surface of the library. And the sun is exactly 186,413,671 miles from this kitchen.
Well, gotta work.
Okay, you guys.
We get a nice montage of Timmy's dad's day at work, which goes swimmingly well apparently, aside from coming across Dinkleberg at the water cooler. Meanwhile, Timmy's mom is flying around town and ends up selling an entire block worth of houses in a matter of minutes. After a long, full day's work, the both of them fly back home.
So, how was school?
I haven't left yet. You've only been gone a few minutes.
Timmy's parents attempt to lie to him, telling him that it was work for a few minutes day at work, and then they all stand there awkwardly for a bit. Timmy tells them that the bus doesn't come for another 30 minutes, and he was hoping that they could all sit down and talk together.
And that's all you need to know about where babies come from.
But what's the machine for?
I'll tell you when you're older.
There's a bus. Gotta go. Love you. Bye.
Wow, what a cool kid!
It's nice that we got to spend this time with Timmy, but now we've got the whole morning to do anything we want.
You thinking what I'm thinking?
Oh, yeah.
It's time to fight crime!
Just like that, Mighty Mom and Dino Dad spring into action to fight crime across Dimsdale. We get a nice montage of the two of them stopping various crimes in progress, ranging from littering all the way to full-blown robberies. Mighty Mom and Dino Dad spend the whole day fighting crime while Timmy is at home scrubbing the toilet at Vicky's command. Later that night, they make it home and Timmy is just so excited to see them finally.
Say the words. Vicky, you can go home.
You can go. Back to watching Timmy for the rest of the night.
Look over there.
Mom, Dad, oh no! Guess what time it is? They'll be back. I know they will. Their Timmy senses will be tingling any minute.
My Timmy senses are tingling.
I don't have time for Timmy. I'm trying to make the world safe for Timmy.
Timmy starts to realize how much this situation really isn't ideal. Now that his parents have superpowers, they don't really have time for him anymore. He decides to wish that they didn't have superpowers anymore, but of course, his parents are so super powerful that they're invulnerable to magic, so Cosmo and Wanda can't do anything to strip them of their powers.
The only way to get them to change back is if I make them vulnerable again.
How are we gonna do that?
Well, it says here, to change a super person back to normal, they have to willingly give up their powers on their own.
That's it! Then I'll make them! I'll become the biggest, baddest, most powerful supervillain ever! I wish I was Galactimus, the Eater of Planets!
Upon reaching his ultimate form, Timmy as Galactimus launches his attack against Mighty Mom and Dino Dad. He threatens to eat their planet like a meatball, so they jump right into action, unbeknown to them that they're actually fighting their own son. The three of them duke it out, with Mighty Mom and Dino Dad using unconventional attacks such as super bad breath, super cold breath, spider snot, and of course meat vision.
Form of a giant shark!
Shape of a bucket of water! Beware my power.
Sorry, honey.
As the fight continues, Mighty Mom and Dino Dad start to lose hope as they realize that Galactimus is a lot stronger than he looks, and unfortunately, he looks pretty strong to begin with. The two of them think about how they're gonna beat him, but things start to look pretty grim.
To me, my fairy!
Hey, where are my pants?
Surrender your powers to me, or I shall destroy the Earth and your son!
They've got Timmy!
I love you, Mom. Give up your powers. I love you, Dad. Give up your powers.
Mighty Mom and Dino Dad take a moment to rationalize the situation, and they both come to the conclusion that the only way to save the Earth and Timmy is to become vulnerable and relinquish their powers. The two of them agree, and they bow down to Galactimus, relinquishing their powers.
Galactimus! We give you our powers!
I wish their powers were gone!
Farewell, powers.
Timmy gives his parents a huge hug and says that he's really happy to have them back to normal. With all of them sitting together in this peaceful open field, Timmy suggests that they have a picnic together as Cosmo and Wanda magically poof together a picnic for the whole family.
Picnic vision. You don't suppose Timmy has...
Oh, don't be ridiculous. Let's just enjoy our lunch with the most important thing in our lives, Timmy.
Right. This is a boring town anyway.
Man, on the heels of that ending, I just want to reflect for a few on how much I enjoyed this show as a kid. When I was in like 4th grade, this show was at its peak. I loved it so much, and I would watch it all the time. I totally recognize that when I was that age, one of the biggest things that drew me into this show was its air of random quirkiness and the overall weird nature of this show. There were a lot of odd jokes and off-the-wall humor that definitely would appeal to a 10-year-old 4th grader's mind. Now, with that being said, as an adult, I've come to find a whole new love for this show in the sense that looking back on it, the Fairly OddParents almost had kind of an, at the time, modern-day Rocko's Modern Life sort of vibe. Granted, it's watered down in the adult jokes hidden in plain sight in comparison to Rocko, however, both shows shared this random humor kind of nature. The adult jokes hidden in plain sight were in full effect in this episode, but with that being said, that's not something that would occur in nearly every episode of this show like it did for Rocko's Modern Life. When they did drop a little adult jokey joke though, it was always in a really clever way. For example, Timmy asking his parents where babies come from, then they cut to him leaving and asking what the machine is for. This just had me in stitches. Or right after that, when Timmy's mom is clearly looking forward to some private time with Timmy's dad, but instead he has fighting crime on his mind. The cheeky humor like that is just so golden. Personally, I'm a huge fan of adult jokes hidden in children's cartoons, especially when it's through the context of something children are guaranteed not to understand. This one, in my opinion, kind of blurs that line a little bit because it's pretty straightforward. But the thing is about Fairly OddParents though, is those adult jokes were hidden gems in a sea of just random humor for the sake of it. For clarity though, I'm not trying to say that the sea of randomness is bad by any means, but I will say some random jokes landed better than others. Of course, all of this is open to interpretation and your specific taste in humor, but as an example, when we see Mighty Mom and Dino Dad turn into a giant shark and a bucket of water. The bucket of water is so incredibly useless, and the way that they drew Timmy's dad's face on there was just hilarious to me. But a few seconds later, Mighty Mom, as a giant shark, bites Galactimus, and of all places to bite him, it's on his butt. The joke, of course, being, ha ha ha, butts are funny. I'll be the first to admit, as a 10-year-old, I thought this specific part was literally laugh out loud funny. As an adult though, it just kind of feels like bottom of the barrel humor. These kinds of jokes were perfect for the target audience at the time, and I've come to accept that I'm obviously not that target audience anymore, and that's okay. Apart from the adult humor, another thing that I truly loved about this episode was all of the superhero references. There's actually quite a bit that you may have missed if you're not well versed in superhero lore. Taking it from the top, we have the hidden secret identities that Mr. and Mrs. Turner adopted. Them donning their suits with hats was a nod to the classic appearance and depiction of Superman's alter ego Clark Kent. Then of course we have what might be the best reference in this episode, Galactimus, who's a play on my all-time favorite omnipotent cosmic entity from the Marvel Universe, Galactus, the Devourer of Worlds. Also, I was today years old when I connected the dots on his name. I always thought Galactimus was just a weird play on Galactus just because, but I'm just now realizing that it's Galactimus because he's Timmy disguised as Galactus. Now, I say that one might be my favorite reference because it's a pretty close tie with the moment where he calls for his fairies and they come to him donning silver flesh and riding on skateboards. This right here being a reference to the one and only Sentinel of the Spaceways and once upon a time herald to Galactus, the Silver Surfer. Honestly, it's close, but this has to take the cake as my favorite superhero reference in this episode. The Surfer is my all-time favorite superhero. You all know that I'm a sucker for an emotionally gripping tale, and the Silver Surfer arc that was told through his comic book throughout the 80s and into the early 90s was absolutely phenomenal. 10 out of 10 recommend. Aside from those references though, we would also see nods to famous superheroes in the form of some superpowers that Mighty Mom and Dino Dad were bestowed with. Specifically, we're talking about the spider snot that Mighty Mom had, being a reference to Spider-Man's spider shot, and then of course we have their Timmy senses, which is certainly their version of Spider-Man's Spidey sense. And lastly, we briefly touched on the gag where Mighty Mom and Dino Dad turn into a giant shark in a bucket of water. This of course is a reference to the Wonder Twins who had the power to morph into pretty much anything that they could think of. I know comic books and superheroes aren't everyone's cup of tea, but as a comic book fan at heart, I absolutely loved all the superhero references that they were able to slip into this episode. On top of that, I thoroughly enjoyed the comic book inspired slides that would appear periodically throughout this episode. They were so much fun, and they really attributed to this episode having that special kind of comic book feel to it. Now, moving in kind of a different direction though, we have to circle back to what I said at the beginning about how Timmy was really dealt a crappy hand in the parent department. That would be a constant theme throughout this show, especially considering the basis of the entire plot. It honestly really hurt to see Timmy feeling neglected and let down because his parents were working too hard. Honestly, as a dad, that's one of my biggest fears. My kids mean the absolute world to me, and the last thing that I'd ever want is for them to feel like I don't have enough time for them. Unfortunately though, that same sentiment isn't really shared by Timmy's parents. Outside of this episode, we see them gone all the time, leaving him in the care of Vicky. In this one, they portray it as if they're out working too much. Admittedly though, outside of this episode, there are many occasions where they're gone because they're off having a date night or enjoying some other activity together without Timmy. Don't get me wrong, it's so important for parents and couples in general to get quality time alone together and to do activities together, but you gotta admit, Timmy does spend a lot more time with Vicky than he does with his parents throughout the course of this show. I do have to give them some slack though, because I can totally relate to that feeling of working in your sleep because you're spread so thin and exhausted. When I was working as a 911 dispatcher, there were times when I'd work a 16-hour shift and I'd only have an 8-hour turnaround time before I have to be back. My commute home was like 40 minutes, so I'd get like 5 hours of sleep before having to come back and work another shift. It was completely brutal, and on top of that, there were nights when I'd go to sleep and my wife would wake up to me talking in the middle of my sleep, straight up dispatching a call while I'm passed out. That's a tough one, and being completely overworked really sucks. In that regard though, I definitely feel for Timmy's parents. It can be a real struggle to balance work and life when the company you work for is sucking up 80% of your time. This episode is kind of a mixed bag of moving parts though. Timmy is feeling neglected because of them being spread so thin. However, when he essentially relieves them of being spread so thin, they allocate all of their time to fighting crime, which has them spread even more thin than they were before. And now that they're superheroes, they don't get tired, so they can just fight crime 24/7. It reminds me just a little bit of my Dark Side of Hey Arnold video about Helga and her relationship with her mom. I mean, completely different shows, but the principle still stands. Helga's mom was so neglectful that Helga was suffering as a result. However, when she finally got her act together and got a job, she started to go in the right direction of spending more time with Helga. Unfortunately though, she would end up letting her job consume her life, and the outcome would leave Helga feeling even more neglected than she was before. Both episodes result in a sad outcome where the parents in question kind of suck whether they're on top of their game or not. Even with superpowers and all the time in the world, Timmy's parents still weren't there for him, and that hurts. On top of that, when we consider the lengths that Timmy had to go through to get them back to normal, it's honestly extremely sad. Like, he had to straight up get into a super-powered physical fight with his parents in order to get them back to normal. I mean, the irony here is just astounding. At one point, Timmy's dad says that he doesn't have time for Timmy because he's busy trying to keep the world safe for Timmy. Meanwhile, the climax of the episode is them full-blown attacking their son, again, unbeknown to them. If we connect the dots here, we come to realize that literally the only way that Timmy could get their attention was through an altercation with them. The only attention they were willing to give him was fighting him, and that's just so depressing. Granted, they didn't know they were fighting their own son. Still, he had to pretend to be a giant omnipotent being in order to get their attention because at this point they're full-blown ignoring their Timmy senses. All in all, this episode was kind of a sad one when you put the pieces together and come to realize that all of this is a portrayal of a neglected kid just begging for some attention from his parents. But again, with that being said, we need to keep in mind that that's the whole premise of this show. Timmy feels so alone in the world, and he got abused by Vicky so bad that the universe granted him with Cosmo and Wanda to soften the blow. This show is an interesting contradiction because, all things considered, the plot is pretty sad, but from start to finish, it's also filled with random humor and colorful gags all over the place. If there's anything else that I want to point out, it's the fact that Mr. and Mrs. Turner did an absolutely terrible job of hiding their superpowers. I mean, they're literally flying in front of everyone while in their alter ego costumes that are actually intended to disguise them as normal people who don't have powers. Then, they were blatantly using their powers in front of Timmy and Vicky, all the meanwhile obliviously pretending like everyone around them had no idea that they had superpowers. It was a really interesting reminder of how stupid Timmy's parents are portrayed in the show, especially his dad. Mr. Turner is the definition of a dumb cartoon dad in my opinion. He's constantly being portrayed as a full-blown idiot throughout the entirety of this show. On top of that, despite them acting like Timmy had no idea that they had superpowers, they don't even flinch when, in the end, he acknowledges them being turned back to normal. It almost seemed as if they didn't even try to hide it to begin with. There wasn't even a, "oh, you knew the whole time?" It was just like they continued on like nothing ever happened. However, that's the glory of a show like this though. It's a show where continuity consistently gets thrown right out the window. There isn't really a story to be gathered from this show. It's simple, straightforward gags for the sake of making people laugh. That's definitely another thing that I'd say I appreciate about this show. It really doesn't take too much thought. Whereas shows like Hey Arnold or As Told by Ginger would have me looking deep into the plot and searching for details in past episodes to support later episode findings, The Fairly OddParents is a great show to dive into when you just want to enjoy some mind-numbing cartoon humor. But what do you think? Did you enjoy this episode? Do you think that Timmy's parents are pretty terrible? Let me know in the comments down below. I always love seeing your guys' feedback. Massive shout out to my patrons, especially you all in the true 90s kids tier. I really appreciate your support and for being a part of my special little community. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to drop a like and give some praise to the YouTube algorithm in hopes that it pushes this video to everyone else. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.